Black Mental Health Matters. I'm Dr. Carryann Williams. I'm a psychiatrist practicing here in Massachusetts, and this is a podcast about everything related to mental wellness in the Black community and beyond. What if the most harmful oppression you experience is the voice inside your own head? When you pay attention to the voice of your thoughts, does that voice sound like kind and loving, or does it sound like fear? Today, I'm going to speak with Adaiah Lassalle, who's a primary contributing author to the book, Rewriting the Script, The Power of Transforming Inner Dialogue in Oppressed Communities. Let's meet Adaiah. So Adaiah Lassalle is a licensed clinical social worker, a healing-centered practitioner, and advocate for racial and social justice. Her work focuses on intergenerational healing, trauma-informed care, and rewriting inherited narratives. She facilitates healing spaces for individuals and communities to reclaim their voice, worth, and joy. So welcome to the show, Adaiah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. Hello, everyone.
So tell us a little bit more about yourself and why you do what you do.
Oh, absolutely. So I've known since I was a little girl that I've always wanted to help people, and I wanted to do it in, mental health. Like I knew just like I said, just from like a young age that this was something that I wanted to do. And as I went further and further in my career, I got to be exposed to a lot of different, populations, a lot of different things. And I said, wow, this is it. This is what I'm, passionate about. And so there it went. It just, the series of things that happened in my life led me to where I am. And it just, again, highlighted what I knew from a child.
Wow. And so why was it important for you to write and contribute to this book? And I have a copy right here, guys, Rewriting the Script. What was it important for you to write and contribute to this book?
Oh my gosh. When I first heard about it from Dr. Marta Sador, I was super excited because I felt it checked all the boxes of the different roles. So personally, as an African-American woman, full-figured, it was like it began to talk about all of that intersectionality of all of these different systems that have influenced my life in some way, shape, or form. So whether it was like racism, classism, colorism, sizeism, it provided an avenue to kind of look at that. When I looked at the research, there was research on internalized oppression. There was research on like self-talk and all of that, but never in an integrated way. So I really wanted to be a part of that research and bringing to bear like the awareness of that intersectionality of those two things. As a clinician, it was an opportunity to bring evidence-based treatment modalities and interventions to something that a lot of us haven't really covered. So as clinicians, we often look at oppression in its many different forms. We often look at self-talk, but never really in an integrated way. So I was super excited about that. As a parent, it was like an opportunity for me to begin to explore what were the messages that I've been sending my own children, my own family, my clients, and all of the people that I'm interacting with. How did my own oppressed inner dialogue, how was that impacting my relationships, what I was passing down, my use of survival skills, all of those different things. What narratives, what am I modeling? So that was great. As a healing practitioner, it was like it provided a pathway, a road to really look at my inner dialogue, how it was influenced by all of these different types of oppressive systems, and then come up with a way to not just say, oh, just think differently, but actually a step-by-step process by which I could do it. And then lastly, as an advocate and a change agent, it was really an opportunity to say, it's like, it's not only about addressing those external things in terms of oppression, but also the internal and the influence that it had. So super excited about it. I know that was a pretty long thing, but I just can't say enough about why I was just so excited about being a part of it. It definitely checked so many of my boxes in so many different roles. So yeah.
No, that's amazing. I mean, so rewriting the script, the power of transforming inner dialogue in oppressed communities. Tell me, who is this book written for? Who should read this book?
Everyone. I mean, in terms of as clearly as I said, I mean, as an individual, no matter which social group identity, you're a part of, there's a benefit to it. So whether you're a clinician, a teacher, a public policy maker, someone who has personal experience with, internalized oppression. It's just really for everyone who just wants to be aware of their own inner narratives and be able to replace those that are not really working for them, that don't really highlight who they are. So yes, everyone can benefit from it in some way, shape, or form.
Oh, great. And so now the description of the book, Rewriting the Script, says that it is a book that reveals how internalized oppression becomes the silent narrator of our lives, shaping who we believe we are, what we think we deserve, and how we relate to others. So just so everybody's on the same page, what exactly is inner dialogue?
Yeah, so definitely. So we're going to do inner dialogue. And I think I would be remiss if I also didn't mention what internalized oppression is, because this is something that we've been using so much. So I'll talk about like operationalizing both of them and then how they intersect and how they influence one another. So when we look at internalized oppression, it's really those unconscious messages that we internalize. So it's what marginalized group unconsciously absorb through negative messages, stereotypes, demeaning beliefs about that the dominant group has, or that they internalize in terms of that. It's also about how we internalize different isms. So whether it's racism, sexism, ageism, sizeism, colorism, capitalism, homophobia, transphobia, all of the different type of isms, just so many more, how we internalize all of those things, and it turns inward. So that's what internalized oppression is. And then when we look at our inner dialogue, it is like that constant narrative. It's the things that we're saying to ourselves that really do just impact how we think, how we feel, how we live, basically, in all different aspects in terms of that. It's a voice that we may hear that may be saying, I'm not good enough, or I don't belong here. And it's something that is often that we hear different messages that we don't necessarily realize that we're internalizing, but it's like that constant thing that's there. It contributes to maybe us policing ourselves or doubting or second guessing ourselves, or even in the way that we communicate, with other people. So when you look at both of those things together, how inner dialogue impacts so many different areas of our life and how we operate. And then when you look at internalized oppression through all of these various isms, it just really highlights the importance of being able to understand how they're connected, and also to have a way to manage those things in a way that is healthy, empowering, and kind of dismantles things that are not of us, that are not helpful to us, that are not authentic.
Wow, that's so kind of clear. And I think about this idea of liberation. in the context of this book, we know the word liberation, but in the context of this book, in the context of inner kind of oppression and inner dialogue, what is liberation?
So liberation was so many things. And I didn't even realize until we started to do more and more about the book. I'm like, wow, I'll never look at liberation the same way again. But when we look at it, liberation is not a destination. It's a way of being. It's a way of living, leading, and relating, right? And so it had so many different opportunities throughout the book in terms of liberation from old survival skills, whether it was silencing or shrinking or code switching. So freedom from those. Acknowledging and being able to be aware of these inner voices and where they came from and how they are not our own. Liberation in terms of, the language that we use, how we breathe, our bodies, our choices. Just, it just highlights how much power that we have when we remove all of those things that kind of block it. So just, I can't say enough about all of the different things that it allows you to do in terms of free you of all of those things, frees you of those old scripts, those narratives that really do not serve you. It allows you to do so many things once you have that awareness and a way in which to, go about it in a way that works for you. Yeah.
And I like that you talk about power, because it seems to me that a faulty or unhelpful inner dialogue can lead you to feel powerless. You feel kind of bound to your circumstance, but that boundedness, I guess, or whatever the right word would be, that feeling of being bound is internal in many ways. And so I like that idea of power, liberation and power kind of being linked concepts.
Absolutely.
And feeling a sense of power being a healing force.
Absolutely. Yeah. The power to control your own narratives. Awesome. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
And so there's a quote in the book that says, oppression taught you fluency in self-criticism. Liberation will feel like learning a new language. So tell us a little bit more about this shifting from oppressive self-talk to the language of liberation and how to go from that deeply embedded oppressive thought to allow thoughts of liberation to become your automatic thoughts. Like, is it even possible for thoughts of liberation to become automatic?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so when we look at it, it's a 4-part process. So you have awareness, you have disruption, you have replacement, and repetition. And I'll break those down a little bit. So it's having an awareness of your inner dialogue, where it came from, its impact, how it's influencing various aspects of your life. So having that awareness is always first. Awareness is always the first step of liberation. Disrupting is where we begin to look at authoring it in our own way, replacing those inner dialogues sentence by sentence, those scripts that we're using sentence by sentence. And given that that broad influence that our inner dialogue has, it also provides it in way of our language, our choices, our body, our breath. So disrupting it in all of those different ways. In terms of replacing, you're replacing those old scripts, something that says like, I'm not good enough, to I'm more than enough. You're planting those seeds. You're beginning to nurture it. You're beginning to, again, make choices that kind of support what you're doing in terms of that new language. And then in the repetition piece, you're continuing to support it and you're finding ways to make it sustainable. in all different, areas of your life that may do that. It could be joining a healing circle, an advocacy group, talking about it, the authors that we choose, just all types of things to just kind of reaffirm that language, that highlight, again, our power, our ability, our contribution, and making it okay to do all of those things.
Wow. It's finding the truth, really, because it's like that inner narrative that's oppressive. There's so much, I guess, untruth, lies. You're believing a lie. And like, it's kind of like this place where you're, coming to learn the truth and believe it and really kind of absorb that in a way that's life transforming.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what if, I imagine it's kind of hard to shake, if this is something that's deeply embedded, maybe it's what's in your mind is the voice of a parent that repeatedly told you, something that really shook you, or, whatever it may be. What do you guys do if it just seems like, gosh, this is really hard to shake?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I think that the first step is to have compassion and kindness towards yourself. You're dealing with an inner narrative that you have heard for many, many, many years, and you've heard it regularly, frequently, and intensely. It's like you've heard it, you may have written it, you thought about it, you act on it. So just really having some compassion for yourself first and foremost. And anytime we're learning anything new, it's a process. It takes time. Initially, we may stumble a little bit. We may wonder, we may revert back to what we might have done before. So I would say that that's always, that first step. And because it's so commonplace and it's just a part of how we operate as human beings, we have a lot of different tools that we have in the book that kind of help with that. And so one of my favorites is what we call the evidence check. And that is a cognitive restructuring tool that's used in cognitive behavioral therapy, where if you have like this thought, so let's just say, I don't belong here. In this evidence check, it's like you create two different lists. One list is things that support that, right? That support that I don't belong here. And then the other one is a list of things that challenge it. And so as we reflect, most likely we're going to find that there are a lot of things that just don't support this idea of I don't belong. And then when we look at, well, what challenges this notion that kind of solidifies that I actually do belong? You might have things like your degrees, your level of education, your talents, your skills, your lived experience, what you can bring to whatever table that you are sitting at that kind of proves that you do belong here. And the more you kind of are able to recognize it, it gradually loses its power. So you want to be able to use the same thing that was used to kind of solidify those old scripts, but in a new way that's more beneficial to you. So you want to practice it regularly, frequently, and intensely. You're going to say it, you're going to write it, you're going to act it out, you're going to do all of these things to help give yourself as much practice doing these new scripts, these new narratives.
Wow. Now, I've heard about this kind of like positive psychology thing where people kind of amp themselves up in the mornings with like positive affirmations. And I've seen in the news this term called toxic positivity. Mm-hmm. How is this different from like toxic positivity, that kind of direction?
Yeah. So awesome question again. So ours is different because it incorporates a lot of different evidence-based modalities and interventions. So it takes from cognitive behavioral therapy, schema therapy, acceptance commitment therapy, narrative therapy, and it also incorporates aspects of neuroscience as well. So those are the major difference, because all of those different modalities that I just mentioned influence the approach that we're taking throughout the course of the book that really help us to create the change and the awareness that is our purpose in doing.
Okay, so it's a lot more grounded and evidence-based. It's not just a kind of, not just a feel-good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. It was, that was one of the things that was really important that we do. I mean, being that all of the authors are seasoned clinician and practitioners, and of course, Dr. Marsha being a psychiatrist and certified in so many different things. It was something that was really important, that we wanted to give people tools, not just, gimmicks or just the positive affirmation, but a real step-by-step path that could lead them to having healthier inner dialogue that is free from a lot of those systems of domination that have influenced it for so long.
Yeah. Oh. So one of the concepts that got my attention in the book was how internal oppression and a person's inner dialogue can speak to their choice to remain silent versus being vocal. So this concept of silence, can you say a bit more about how this plays out in oppressed communities, and what should the goal or hope look like for reclaiming one's voice?
Yeah, absolutely. So silencing is a strategy of survival. Basically, it's something that we often use in oppressive or hostile context, when we're in those type of environments. It's often something that has been carried down from generation to generation to help us to survive in all of these different systems. So if you take something like back during slavery times, if you had slaves that knew how to read and write, they wouldn't expose that because of the possible consequences to that. If you saw someone being wronged in some ways, experiencing some type of atrocity, if you were to say something in those circumstances, that could mean dire consequences to you or the people, close to you. When we look at how silencing kind of appears to us now, it's kind of like not saying something in class or during meetings because you're concerned about ridicule, or not being too emotional because you don't want to maybe, draw that, attention to you. And so when we look at that silencing, it creates like, we almost become like invisible in a sense. And that's kind of like the goal. Like, they can't see, you can't harm. Right? We can't get harmed. So it was kind of serving as a protective thing. But as we look at it, what we discover is that although silence was helpful and helped us to survive in many ways, it also became limiting and restrictive. And so as we recognize that, we honor the ways that helped us to survive and navigate all of these hostile, oppressive systems, while at the same time recognizing the need for new liberating ways. Again, that don't silence our power, our contribution, and our abilities to be able to do all of these various things. So it is our hope that with the different reflection exercises, the journaling, all of the healing circle format that we have throughout the book, where different people kind of talk about their process and what silencing did for them, like in terms of how it showed up, what were the benefits, what were the drawbacks, what were the costs to them, to that silencing, that you're able to discover that and then utilize however and whatever areas of your life you've been using silencing, whether it's at home, in your workplace, in public spaces, no matter where you are, to be able to say, well, how can I no longer do this, while at the same time maintain that, that safety, but in a new way. right? So to find ways that are specifically geared towards you in a way that you can kind of vocalize what you've been keeping hidden.
Wow. Now, another concept that got my attention, and it's related, it's reclaiming space. There's a quote in the book that says, "Oppression is designed to make you fear taking up space. Liberation is learning that the discomfort of others is not the measure of your worth." Tell us about what it can look like when your inner oppressive monologue speaks to you about taking up or not taking up space. Unpack that for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So just as you mentioned, silencing, very similar to this idea of shrinking, not taking up space, code switching, all of these things were ways that we use to survive and navigate oppressive or hostile environments. And so when you look at what are some of the ways that we may be shrinking ourselves, it could be things like dimming your light, downplaying when you get, accolades or compliments. It could be deflecting, praise. It could be in your body language where you may like close in on yourself. So it presents itself in a lot of different ways. Lots of times it ends up with us having like a loss of opportunity, reinforcing this idea of this smallness. And it decreases our confidence in things over time as well. Same thing with that code switching in terms of it could just be downright just exhausting. When we look at, trying to keep up with, do I say this? Do I not say this? This idea of like, I need to be perfect, this perfectionism, this self-policing, myself, other people. So it's about really looking at that. So when we look at reclaiming space, we see that it's a process. And it's a process that's very unique to us as individuals, because how this idea of space and how we take it up and don't take it up is really a function of how we're living our lives currently. So it's like, in what areas of our life are we shrinking? Are we, silencing ourselves, dimming our light, not taking those leadership roles, not, being out? Where does that play out? Does it play out in my home? Does it play out, in my job? Does it play out in how I am in open spaces? What are the different ways that this idea of shrinking is playing in my life? What are the costs to me? What were the benefits at one point? And then what are the drawbacks? So then when you look at how can I reclaim that space, once you kind of identify and you have this awareness of how it plays out in your life, you can begin to do that. So if, for example, if you're shrinking in your body, you may be like up and open, like just open, tall, unclenching your arms, free, living in that way. If it's with, your language, you might begin to speak out more at times when you feel like you really, would like to or could benefit from. It could be as simple as just taking a deep breath in a public space, right? So there's just so many different ways that we can reclaim our space, also with our choices, the authors we may choose to read, the podcasts we may choose to listen to, the movies or whatever that we may watch, just so many different ways that just are really geared towards our own personal journey. So it could look so many different ways depending on what you discover.
Wow. And so kind of looking ahead, what effect can this inner transformation have on our communities and future generations?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I think that highlights it best is one of the things we call in the book that ripple effect tool, where we see how an individual's inner liberation impacts their relationships, impacts communities, and then in structures. So just to provide kind of like a real world example, Rosa Parks, for example, by her choosing to not give up that seat, that was a form of liberation for her, right? To go against what was accepted at that particular time. So we saw how that individual act kind of mobilized communities to get together and form these boycotts, right? And it had financial impact on the transportation system and things at that time. It led to, court cases that led to desegregating public transit. So you saw how this individual choice mobilized communities, which then impacted all of these different structures. So that's an example of how it could be. It could be anything in just like everyday kind of like life, how we live, the messages that we give our kids, the narratives, how we are in our jobs, what language that we're using, the language on our written forms that we use. Is it inclusive? What are we really passing down? So change at any level has a ripple effect. And we see that our healing is not only inward, but it also spreads outward, and it's collective in nature. So as we heal as individuals, we also can begin to heal our communities and address structures that kind of undermine those things, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And Adaiah, I'm so interested to know what this might look like in real time. Is there any way that you can give us a little bit of a sample exercise that I and the listeners can maybe go through for what you might say to someone who needs a little bit of inner transformation of their inner dialogue?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would love to do that. Throughout our book, we have a lot of different experiential exercises. And being that we've been talking so much about inner dialogue and the power and the influence that it has, I would love to do a brief exercise with everyone that kind of gets you to be more aware of your inner dialogue. So let's just start off with just breathing. You're just going to breathe, center yourself in the space. When I do these reflection exercises, I tend to like it with my eyes closed, but not everybody, likes that. So whatever works for you. So just start off with the breathing. And I want you to think of a time, reflect on a time when you were either afraid, ashamed, or felt invisible. Now, I want you to pay attention to what the voice inside of yourself said at this time when you were feeling that fear, ashamed, or invisible. Now I want you to reflect when did you first notice this voice? Was it when you were a child? When you were a teenager? An adult? Whose voice does it sound like? Does it sound like your own? A parent? Family member? A teacher? In media representations? And what has been your response to it? Did you question it? Or did you live it like as if it was true, without challenging it at all? What was the cost to you? Did it cost you joy, connection, confidence? Now I want you to think about, what did that voice protect you from? Was it from harm? Was it from punishment, ridicule, rejection? And now, as you're still breathing, I want you to kind of put your hands to your chest and say to yourself, if this was a voice that someone that I truly cared about was having, what might I say to them? So if they're thinking, I don't belong, I'm not enough, I can never do enough, what might you say to them? And then I want you to ask yourself, could I show myself that same kindness, that same consideration? I want you to end with breathing. And now I want you to think about, what did you notice while you were doing that exercise? What came up for you and what it was like for you to do this particular exercise?
It's funny, as I listened, one of the things that stood out to me was a question of kind of whose voice is that? Where's that voice coming from? But the other thing that stood out to me was the idea of what, did it have some kind of function? Like, did it protect you from something in the past? Basically, why is it still there? What is it serving, or attempting to serve? And so that really stood out to me. So thank you.
Yeah, great. I'm glad. Hopefully everyone will enjoy it, and it provides an opportunity to really reflect and become more aware. And that awareness, you've already started that liberation process, because that is the first step, is to be aware.
Yeah, that's so true. The first step towards liberation is awareness. How can you liberate from something that you don't know? You're not aware
Absolutely.
of.
Definitely. Absolutely.
So again, rewriting the script. I kind of ask one more question, and that is this a book that people can just use on their own, or do they need to do this with a therapist?
Well, it is a book that you can do on your own, depending on what you uncover. You may want to do it with a therapist to work out some of the things that you may have discovered. But also they can be done in healing circles where you have other, like-minded individuals who are sharing and witnessing one another's experience. Sometimes we just need that recognition that we're not the only ones who are experiencing some of the things. And so absolutely, the way it's written, it's in healing circle format, where it's like you get to share and witness each person's, process and how they're sharing and different things like that. So absolutely can be done with a therapist, without a therapist. It could be done with, a close friend. It can happen in journaling, so many different ways that you can do it, in so many different stages. And you can, come back, do a little bit, and then, come back at a different time. Each time that I find that I go back and I do it, I discover something new, just because I'm in a different space sometimes at that time. So definitely you can use it at any time, with or without a therapist.
So now, where can listeners get more information on this topic? Is there a website?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sweet Institute, they did a hybrid course. Well, I actually facilitated the hybrid course where they talked about the different, stages, and it was based on the book. Also, sweetpublishing.com also has the book. You can also, get it on Amazon. My hope is that we're going to be doing some more stuff on it, on rewriting the script and how that would work, and play out, kind of, highlighting the steps. So you can, contact me at liberatingpathways.com if you're interested in some of those things, so that we can do that. So available. Yep.
Okay. And now, as we wrap up, I always like to ask all of my guests at the end to share 5 things that they do for their own mental health. So can you share 5 things with us that you do for your own mental health?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I do is scans and inquiries. And so that could be like a feeling scan, where I'm asking myself, how am I feeling right now? That could be a thought scan. What am I thinking about right now? Or what am I doing right now? or what was that about? Something that I may notice. So all of those just kind of increase awareness, right? So that's something that I do on a regular basis. Breath. How am I breathing right now? So I just do a lot of scans and inquiries. So that's one thing. Those are multiple things in one, but I just put them under like one category. The other thing is the opportunity principle, which is no matter what I experience or what happens in my life, it's like I'm asking myself, what is this an opportunity for? So that's something that I love. That's one of my go-tos. My other one is my 3 N's, and that is, what am I noticing? I'm naming it, and then I'm noticing how I'm navigating it when I experience it. So love that one. The other thing is I use any life interfering feeling. So anger, frustration, overwhelm. I use that as a cue to go back to my scans and inquiries to just kind of get an idea of what that would be like. And then the other thing is, and that this is a process, is I'm learning to say no. And to, it's okay to rest. It's okay not to be superwoman. It's okay to just, so that is something that I am definitely practicing. I'm aware that it's something that I need to do, disrupting it, replacing it with, it's okay to rest. And I'm definitely doing various things to kind of, support it becoming, permanent and sustainable. So those are 5 things that I would definitely do.
Now, I think I had read somewhere that rest is a form of liberation.
It is. It definitely is. It definitely is. I mean, especially, I'm sure a lot of people, experience it, but I know for me, it definitely comes into play, because sometimes we're often sent so many messages that it's not okay to rest, and that it's lazy, and you could be doing more, things with your time. And if you have to do more so you can achieve more, so that you can have more. But what I'm finding is that while I'm learning to say no and set those limits, I do have more. I have more peace. I have more peace. I feel more grounded, more centered, more like, okay, I can do this. I can do whatever it is that I choose, and I can be great at all of the different roles that I am, and also have rest as well. It doesn't have to be a either or. It's something that I find a way to navigate both. Yeah. So it's a process. Some days are better than others. Sometimes I'm balancing it a lot better than others, but definitely something that I am continuing to work to sustain.
Yeah. And it, it seems like overall, as we've been talking about today, this work with our inner dialogue is also a process. It's not a one and done. It's just every day, continuing that transformation and self-compassion at the same time. And so I want to thank you today, Adaiah, for joining me on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And listeners, thank you so much for listening in. Be sure to check out the Sweet Institute Publishing. I'm going to put the link in the description. This initiative dedicated to making healing, mental health, and human transformation universally accessible, destigmatizing mental illness, and helping to end mental and emotional suffering. So thank you for listening. Take care and have a wonderful week.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.